1898. The Philippines. American forces meet the Spanish fleet in Manila Bay in a decisive battle for one of Spain's last colonies, the Philippines. Although the battle resulted in no American casualties, its outcome would soon set off a chain of events that would lead to a war that was twice as bloody. The Philippine-American War, as it came to be called, was and continues to be one of the most forgotten conflicts in American history, perhaps because it reveals a darker side of U.S. foreign policy and American freedom. Tempted by the riches of imperialism, the United States would soon fight and suppress an idea on which its entire existence was based. It all started with the Spanish-American War.
In preparation for possible war against Spain, Assistant Secretary of the Navy Theodore Roosevelt placed the U.S. Asiatic Squadron in Hong Kong on alert. When war was declared in April of 1898, Commodore George Dewey sailed from Hong Kong and defeated the Spanish fleet in Manila Bay on the morning of May 1, 1898, but he could not occupy Manila until ground troops arrived 3 months later. On August 13th, Manila fell after a bloodless battle. Spanish Governor Fermin Huadinez had secretly arranged a surrender after a mock show of resistance to salvage his honor. With American troops in possession of the city and Filipino insurgents controlling the rest of the country, conflict was inevitable. The war began with shooting on the outskirts of Manila on the night of February 4, 1899. Throughout the spring of 1899, American troops pushed north into central Luzon Plain, and by the end of that year, the Filipino general Emilio Aguinaldo retreated into the inaccessible northern mountains. The period of conventional battles ended, but insurgent leaders in many provinces continued bitter guerrilla warfare.
From the very beginning of the war, the Filipino struggle for independence was a lost cause. Proving to be very ineffective, conventional warfare which President Aguinaldo and his rebel forces attempted first, depleted the insurgents of much-needed materials and supplies. The Filipino rebels were unsuccessful in their conventional campaign due to their inferior weapons, lack of ammunition, poor training, and a shortage of cavalry and naval power, all of which contributed to the Filipinos' failures in the first phase of the war. In November of 1899, President Aguinaldo issued a decree ordering his troops to retreat to the more inaccessible terrain where a period of guerrilla warfare began. The rebel forces were more successful in their attempts at guerrilla tactics, but it was still not enough to compete with the much more affluent and dominant United States. While their strategies at avoiding battles and hiding were superb, their offensive tactics lacked the military competence to inflict any significant casualties on the American troops. In an area known as the Batangas, General Miguel Malvar led the most successful of the campaigns during the second phase of the war. Instead of directly fighting the Americans, his troops tried to defend the civilians from the atrocities committed against them. Theirs and the entire Filipinos army's efforts were not enough to protect the people, and throughout the entire course of the war, more than 200,000 civilians died. By 1901, the most organized Philippine forces had been decimated and could easily be contained by American troops. In addition to their falling morale, the insurgents had suffered severe losses and their numbers were weak. On March 23, 1901, American soldiers posing as Filipinos captured Emilio Aguinaldo. The soldiers who captured Aguinaldo took him in as a prisoner of war to General MacArthur's headquarters. On April 1, 1901, Aguinaldo took an oath of allegiance to the United States, delivering a crushing blow to the resistance. This event marked the beginning of the end of Philippine resistance, and one by one each of the Philippine generals surrendered. General Malvar was the last to surrender on April 16, 1902, to General Bell. On July 4, 1902, President Theodore Roosevelt officially declared an end to the Philippine War, and all hope for independence was lost.
The Americans won the war after the surrender of the leading Filipino generals. After the war, the Americans governed over the Filipinos and helped them achieve a greater and more modern society through a series of initiatives. After many years of a continuous struggle, the Filipinos acquired their independence from America in 1946. Over the course of the brutal and long-forgotten American-Philippine War, a total of 4,200 American soldiers died to preserve American traditions, and over 20,000 Filipino combatants bravely died defending the honor of their country. Looking back, the darker side of the American crusade to spread democracy prevailed. In reality, the reason the Philippine-American War is so forgotten is because of the overwhelming sense to succumb to the temptation of imperialism and the inevitable tumble into its fallacious splendor.